This is The Bottom Line. The Bottom Line on 938 Live.
Now, the World Cup has ended with Germany getting the trophy, but a season of a different kind of kicking off in the corporate world is happening. It's the earnings season, that is. And what are the companies that will outperform and which will disappoint? For his perspectives now, we have on the line with us David Kuo. He is Chief Executive at the Motley Fool Singapore. Dave, which companies or segments of the market would do well this reporting period, and why do you think so?
I think that the commodity sector, the farming sector, is likely to do well. In particular, I'm looking at the palm oil producers simply because of better palm oil prices. So that is one sector that I'm pretty confident will give us some pretty good numbers, I think, over the next few weeks or so. But as far as the ones that are not going to do that well, I think most of us probably know that the property sector is not doing especially well, not only here in Singapore, but elsewhere in the world as well, simply because of these sort of very high property prices, which is causing some governments to introduce property cooling measures, not just here, but elsewhere also. So I think the property companies could come up with some pretty disappointing numbers.
Right. Now, last week, ratings agency Moody's said the outlook on Singapore's banks remains negative over the next 12 to 18 months. How would the local banks be performing?
Well, Moody's are entitled to their opinion. I'm entitled to mine. I think that, banks are likely to perform quite well simply because we are coming out of recession. I mean, one thing about the banks is that they are at the forefront of any economy. And as the economy starts to improve, then, of course, the bank figures will start to improve. So this quarter, I'm looking forward to some good numbers from the banks, simply because they've got all my money. And I think they're going to be taking my money and lending it to other people. And that is how banks make money, Andre.
Dave, the benchmark Straits Times Index has been hovering close to the 3,300 level. Is there room for the index to climb higher? And if so, when do you think so?
I do hope so, yeah. I think, at the moment, the Straits Times Index doesn't look particularly expensive. Most people sort of look at the Straits Times Index or any index and they say, how expensive is that compared to the profits of the companies that make up the index are making? And currently in Singapore, it's around sort of 13 times profit, which I don't think is really sort of that expensive. So consequently, if we get some good numbers over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think that we can actually sort of see the Straits Times Index push higher. The other thing, of course, Andre, is that there is just so much money floating around the market. According to my back-of-envelope calculations, I think there's somewhere in the region of about 12 to 15 trillion US dollars floating around the global economy as a result of the money printing activities by many of the central governments. So with $15 trillion floating around, I think some of it could end up in Singapore.
All right. Now, the IPO of First Sponsor Group will close this Thursday. Do you expect it to be well received by retail investors?
Well, this is a very interesting question, and of course it is also a very interesting flotation. It is a developer which is focused on a couple of key cities in China, and we all know that China needs to build more as it embarks on this massive urbanization program. In other words, the people moving from the rural areas into the urban areas. So consequently, it will need lots of buildings, and this is where First Sponsor Group will come in. The main question really for investors is how expensive is this company? I am looking at the valuation of the company, in other words, the price to earnings and also the dividend yield. And to my way of thinking, I mean, this company looks quite expensive. So as to whether or not the flotation will be a success really depends on the investors' appetite for buying expensive companies. If they think it's expensive, then I think they will shy away. If they think that the prospects are good, then of course, the flotation will take off.
All right, Dave, always good speaking to you. That was David Kuo. He is the Chief Executive of the Motley Fool Singapore. David Kuo, of course, on The Bottom Line.